celebrated my best friend's success with heartfelt words and cash for her first car. Now she's upset and her friends accuse me of belittling her. I'm a 25-year-old woman living in my own 2-bedroom apartment, the same apartment my uncle used to own. During university, I made a friend I'll call Mary, who's 27 now. Mary had it rough at home growing up, in ways I can barely summarize. Early on, I told her, if she ever needed anything, she could always depend on me. That promise felt easy and natural to give. When graduation came around, I invited Mary to move in with me, free of rent. She tried to pay her share, but I insisted. I knew the weight of her student debt and wanted her to break free from it before worrying about bills. She was deeply grateful and honestly, I just loved sharing my space with her. We never fought, never squabbled over chores or the telly or even trash duty. We were so in sync, it was almost uncanny. Tonight, we were celebrating in a swanky London restaurant. Mary finally paid off her debts, landed a killer job promotion, and passed her driving test, a trifecta of achievements all in a single month. If that's not cause for celebration, nothing is. So, we went all out. Besides me and Mary, there were 4 of her work friends and 2 old uni mates. The night was full of laughter, toasts, pride. But as the main course cleared, I handed Mary a card. Inside it, I'd written about how amazing she is and how lucky I am to have her as my best friend. I'd also tucked in a generous wad of cash, my contribution to her first car. Mary teared up instantly. We hugged, clinging to each other, and all those years of shared struggle and survival just came rushing back. I told her how proud I was, how unstoppable and bright she is, how she'd proved her dad wrong, all the time she'd hustled through uni and garbage jobs, how extraordinary I found her. I meant every word. Then everything turned on a dime. She pulled away, face stormy, and said, "Please don't do that. You know I don't like it when you do that." I was floored. She'd never hinted before that my words bothered her. I apologized at once. I told her honestly, I never meant to hurt her. But she just scoffed and rolled her eyes. I looked up and her colleagues met me with cold, hard stares, heads shaking in silent judgment. I wanted to vanish right there. Mary spent the rest of the night ignoring me. When the table split, her colleagues wouldn't even make eye contact as they left. Back at home, I tried to apologize again as Mary headed to her room, but she only shrugged me off with a tired "we'll talk in the morning." Now I'm sick with anxiety, replaying the entire night, terrified she'll want to move out or cut me off for good. I can't think of a time I ever crossed a line, and if I had, she never showed it. Now all her colleagues are messaging me to say I was an asshole, that I was belittling her, but I never meant it that way. Never. Update 1. She looked up at me, real confusion in her eyes, and asked, "Why are you sorry?" I reminded her about what happened last night, how angry she seemed, how tense things felt between us. But then she just laughed, waving a hand dismissively, and said, "It doesn't matter, don't worry about it," turning her attention back to making breakfast like it was just any other day. I couldn't let it go. I pressed her, did I step out of line last night? Was the money too much? Did I end up making her feel inferior somehow? She shook her head, calm as ever, and said, "Nope. We're cool. It doesn't matter, I think everyone just misunderstood the situation and you're taking things to heart a little too much." But that only left me spinning even more. The confusion doubled up inside me. I told her about her friends blowing up my phone, how they said I was belittling, how I was an asshole. She just shrugged, didn't seem bothered at all, and told me they probably just misread things. "I'll talk to them," she said, and that was it. Meanwhile, I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I was absolutely winded, exhausted from turning the whole thing over in my head all night, staring at the ceiling, convinced she was furious with me. I honestly thought I'd hurt her so badly she'd never want to speak to me again, but here she was, acting like everything was completely normal. It was just another morning to her, cheerful conversation, easygoing, as if last night simply hadn't happened. But I'm so confused. I can't make sense of it, her being totally fine, unfazed, laughing and grinning at me, while my stomach is tied in knots. After seeing so many people say I really crossed a line, after her coworkers treated me like I was some kind of criminal, I was sure I'd destroyed everything. But apparently, we're okay. She's not even fazed. I'm exhausted. I haven't slept because I kept replaying everything in my mind, wondering what I should have done differently. Things still feel unresolved, at least to me, even if she keeps insisting they're fine. I'm going to try to get some sleep, but I know I need to talk to her again when she gets home from work. Her easy reaction still bothers me, and I need to understand what really happened. Update 2. When someone suggested that maybe my friends had said something to Mary's work colleagues about me, making them dislike me, I couldn't let it rest. That afternoon, when both friends came over, I went straight to the point. I asked them directly, and both flatly denied ever saying anything like that. Claire, the friend I'd spoken to earlier on the phone, said she knew one of Mary's colleagues a bit, a woman we'll call Jane. Claire offered to call Jane over to set the record straight, hoping to clear up this knot of confusion. Jane showed up, and the moment she walked through the door, I could tell she was furious. She glared at me with so much hostility that I resisted the urge to duck behind the kitchen counter. We all sat together, and I told Jane that I'd already talked to Mary about what happened last night, that Mary said she was fine, but I was just lost and hoping for some clarity. Jane let out this bitter laugh and snapped, "Oh, don't try that shit with me, you can't just pretend now that you've been exposed in public." The three of us just stared at her in silence, we were all utterly perplexed. Claire, trying to get to the bottom of it, asked Jane what she was talking about. Jane immediately started accusing me, claiming she knew how I really treated Mary. She stood and began this full-blown tirade, saying I regularly abused and belittled Mary, intimidated her into silence, and forced her to put on a fake smile for everyone else. I honestly couldn't decide whether to laugh or to break down right then and there. Jane then pulled out her phone and showed us texts from Mary, where Mary claimed that I'd locked her in her room and had a meltdown over her making friends at work. According to these messages, I was some sort of monster, a fabrication so wild it hardly seemed real. My friends grabbed Jane's phone and looked through the texts themselves. I had to stop reading after a few, as every line felt like another blade. Mary wrote that she was afraid of me, trapped, and that I was extorting huge amounts of rent from her. Shock and numbness settled over me. Mary had been like a sister through all our university years. I couldn't fathom why she was painting me as this villain. It only got worse when Claire found the part where Mary claimed I had cancelled her 21st birthday at university and told her she wasn't allowed to go out. The absurdity of it all, because Claire and our other close friend had been at Mary's 21st, at the party I helped organize and spent more than £500 on, to give her the Great Gatsby-themed night she'd always wanted. Yet in these texts, Mary insisted none of it ever happened. We went through message after message, realizing just how many lies Mary had told her colleagues about me, stories about abuse, isolation, and impossible rent charges. Every word was a blow. My trust in her shattered. To prove the truth to Jane, I pulled up my bank statements to show that Mary didn't pay me anything except her exact half of the bills, no extortion, no secrets. By then, even Jane seemed to question what she'd been told, her anger faded into the same bewildered exhaustion I felt. She admitted that everyone at Mary's work was angry because Mary had convinced them that I was manipulative, pretending to be supportive in public, then using her past against her in private. They'd all assumed that last night, any compliment or kindness from me was just another twisted mind game. It's hard to put into words the betrayal I felt, seeing just how thoroughly Mary had poisoned people against me, without cause, without truth, without any apparent reason other than her own invention. What did she gain from this? What went so wrong that she'd rewrite our entire shared history? Claire had to calm me down. I cried for what felt like an eternity, unable to stop, beyond embarrassed but completely powerless to hold it back. Now, after letting it out, I feel more clear-headed, still furious, wounded, but not overwhelmed by tears. I don't want to see Mary again, not after this. My friends advised me not to do anything rash. Even Claire, disgusted by what she'd read, reminded me to breathe, to wait, and to remember that everyone who really knows us knows the truth. Maybe I can't clear my name with Mary's colleagues. I'm not even sure I care about that anymore. I just need to know why. Why did Mary say these things about me? What did I ever do that was so terrible in her eyes? Jane said little as she left, and I can't guess what she thinks now. For today my friends are staying by my side, waiting for Mary to come home. We're all carrying a mountain of questions that need answers, and I doubt any of us will be able to rest until she tries to give them. Update 3. When Mary got home and saw the three of us sitting there watching television, she lit up instantly and said she'd make popcorn. But Claire quickly took charge and firmly told her to sit down. Confusion crossed Mary's face, but she did as she was told. I could hardly look at her, the words seemed to stick in my throat. Claire led the conversation, starting with how Jane had been round the house, had screamed at me, calling me an abuser and a bully, and then directly asking Mary why on earth she would say those things about me. Mary feigned surprise, acting lost, mumbling about a big misunderstanding, saying Jane tended to twist things, and any miscommunication must have been Jane's fault. But then Claire started reading out the text messages and brought up each instance, each supposed event that Mary had cried to Jane about, painting me as an awful person. Mary tried to laugh it off, calling it a work joke, but Claire wasn't having any of her evasions. She pressed harder, refusing to let any excuse slide, until finally Mary broke. The mask slipped, and Mary started crying, claiming she never meant any of it, that it was all stupid, that it shouldn't matter. She kept repeating she loved me, that it had all just been a stupid story that spiraled way too far. She begged me for forgiveness, but I was just numb, exhausted, really. For the first time in what felt like forever, I met her eyes and told her she had 1 week to find another place and move out. That broke her even more. She completely lost it, wailing and pleading with me to let her stay. She insisted that she never thought it would matter because I didn't even work with them, but I put my foot down. I told her I wouldn't tolerate any of this toxic, destructive bullshit in my life anymore. At that point, I couldn't hold it in. So do you just make up lies about everyone in your life? Is any of it real? She went dead silent, looking at me with those wide, desperate eyes. The lies she'd told about me abusing her suddenly made me question everything she'd ever said, especially those stories from our university days, her dad beating her mom, being homeless since she was 16 after the divorce. I questioned whether any of it was real. So I demanded that she get her mom on the phone then and there. She panicked, desperately begging me not to call. Claire picked up on where I was headed and pressed Mary herself, asking if even the story about her dad was true. That's when Mary cracked. She admitted she may have embellished a few things. I was beyond furious. Who does that? Who invents that kind of pain for sympathy? I can't even capture in words all the things that were screamed in that room as we watched Mary's soap opera of a life unravel under interrogation. Her entire tragic life story turned out to be a fabrication. Her parents did divorce, but there was never any abuse, just two adults who fell out of love and split up. I had to go and call her mother myself later that night to get the real story because for years I'd avoided speaking to her about anything, always respecting Mary's warning that her mom was too sensitive about those topics. The awful truth hit me: my best friend is, and maybe always was, a master manipulator. I am completely wrung out and exhausted by this ceaseless nightmare. I came to this moment riddled with guilt over some supposed mistake I'd made toward a friend I'd trusted, hoping I could somehow fix it. But instead, I learned that the last 7 years of my life were anchored in an elaborate fraud. I'm finished. With Mary. With everything connected to her. I never want to see her again. I know she has the money to get her own place, so I don't feel guilty for kicking her out. What she does next is not my concern. She's out of my life. After all this, I think it's time I finally book myself some therapy sessions. I need to untangle myself from this mess and find some peace after all this chaos. Update 4. I never could have predicted the overwhelming responses I received, or the incredible people who reached out to share their own stories and support. It truly brought me to tears to see this sudden outpouring of empathy and understanding. I needed time to process everything that happened, so I didn't check any messages or updates for a while. I just needed space, especially after having a flat to myself for the first time. It was an odd adjustment, but I quickly realized it was a necessary step in beginning to heal. Mary moved out the very next Saturday after everything blew up. In the days following the argument, she lingered around our apartment, wanting to talk, but I held firm. I told her I needed distance and refused any conversations. When the weekend came, her mom arrived to help her pack her things. Since Mary was moving back in with her, her mom ended up clearing up so many questions that had haunted me. For years, Mary had told me this heart-wrenching tale, that her dad was horribly abusive, that her mom loved him so blindly she wouldn't leave, and so Mary left at only 14, ending up homeless and sleeping under benches in train stations just to avoid their house. That was the story I believed for 7 years. As it turns out, every word was a lie. Not only was Mary never homeless, but her father was never abusive. In fact, he adored both her and her mom. The real reason I never saw him around? He'd moved to Australia for his career, and that was the genuine cause of her parents' divorce. He cared deeply for his family, but his drive for success pulled him abroad and apart. Her mom told me that he'd always invited Mary to come visit him during summer holidays, but she never went because she hates flying. Hearing all of this upended everything I thought I knew. On the day Mary finally left, I stayed hidden away in my room, just trying to make myself as small as possible. But before she walked out for the last time, she knocked on my door, and I answered. As angry as I was, she had been my closest friend for so long, it didn't feel right just letting her slip away without a goodbye. She asked if I wanted back the money I'd given her for her new car, but I told her to keep it and put it towards therapy instead. She broke down in tears, trying to hug me, but I kept my distance. I made it clear this would be the last time we saw or spoke to each other. I simply couldn't have her in my life with the knowledge of what she'd done. She left our flat sobbing, and when she'd gone, the place suddenly felt enormous, cavernous in its emptiness. Adjusting to the loneliness wasn't easy. For the entire first week after she moved out, I kept expecting to find her in the kitchen each morning, or sprawled on the sofa, after work. It was unsettling, like living with a ghost. Eventually, I had my first therapy appointment. I was nervous, not having been since I was in school, but my therapist was a gentle, understanding woman. She helped me begin to see that Mary's lies were entirely her own. I had nothing to do with their creation. She even suggested that Mary might be a compulsive liar, maybe even a narcissist, an idea, she said, that fit with everything I'd described. Then, in another revelation, Jane reached out and asked to meet for coffee. She wanted to talk and get some closure, so we met and she told me something startling. She'd been wondering why Mary had targeted me in her abuse story, so she started asking colleagues about things Mary had said in the past. One story stood out, about a painter who worked in their art restoration and distribution office. He apparently used his art to process trauma from his own abusive stepmother, and Mary, who had a crush on him, had told him the same fake abuse story as a way to forge a connection. I'd known she fancied him, but I never imagined she'd fabricate such a story just to get close to someone. When he found out the truth, he was furious, and now refuses to speak to her. Jane told me most people at work have distanced themselves from Mary. They're all worried that she might invent lies about them too, possibly causing trouble at work, so they all keep her at an arm's length. Hearing this, I genuinely felt a pang of guilt. I know she's having a miserable time. Our friendship group has kicked her out as well. Jane apologized, but I told her she had nothing to be sorry for. This was all on Mary, and she had only ever tried to protect someone she thought was a friend in need. We ended on good terms, though honestly, we don't have much in common, so I doubt we'll ever really be friends. Claire came to stay with me for a bit. Having her around brought me some comfort and sheltered me from the sting of sudden solitude. It's a difficult thing to get used to, being alone, when you've had someone right next to you, practically in every facet of your life, for so long. Update 5. 3 weeks had passed since Mary moved out, and I thought I was finally getting my life back on track. Claire had gone home, I'd settled into my therapy routine, and the flat was starting to feel like mine again rather than a hollow shell of what it used to be. I was even considering getting a cat, something I'd always wanted but Mary claimed she was allergic to. Another lie, I'm sure. Then my phone rang at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Mary's mom, Patricia, and she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "She's missing," Patricia sobbed into the phone. "Mary's been missing for 3 days. The police won't do anything yet because she's an adult, but she never came home from work on Friday. Her car's still in the office car park, her handbag was left on her desk. It's not like her to just disappear." My stomach dropped. Despite everything Mary had done, despite the lies and manipulation, hearing this sent a chill through me. Patricia begged me to come over, said she needed someone who knew Mary well, someone who might have ideas about where she could be. Against every instinct telling me to stay away from this mess, I found myself driving to Patricia's house at midnight. Patricia looked awful, red-eyed, exhausted, clutching a mug of cold tea like it was anchoring her to reality. She showed me the texts Mary had sent throughout the week leading up to her disappearance. They were strange, disjointed. Mary kept mentioning someone called Dee who was finally ready to meet properly and how excited she was about starting fresh somewhere new. Patricia had assumed it was just Mary being dramatic about a new boyfriend. "Did she ever mention anyone with that initial to you?" Patricia asked desperately. I racked my brain, but came up empty. Mary had always been secretive about her romantic interests, even when we lived together. But then something clicked. Jane had mentioned that painter at Mary's work, the one she lied to about her fake abuse story. What was his name? David? Daniel? I called Jane immediately, waking her up. She was groggy but became alert quickly when I explained what was happening. "Oh God," she whispered. "His name is Daniel. Daniel Morrison, but he told her to leave him alone weeks ago when he found out about the lies. He was furious with her." "Jane, this is important, do you know where he lives? Or anything about him?" There was a pause. "He mentioned once that he has a cottage in the Lake District. Uses it as a retreat for his art." But surely she wouldn't. She couldn't just show up there uninvited? But even as Jane said it, we both knew that was exactly what Mary would do. She'd fabricated an entire tragic backstory to get his attention. Following him to his private retreat wasn't beyond her capabilities. I drove back to Patricia's and explained what I'd learned. Her face went white. "She's gone to this man's house? Without him knowing?" Patricia's hands were shaking as she reached for her phone. "We need to call the police properly now. This isn't just a missing person, if she's stalking someone." The next morning, Patricia and I drove up to the Lake District. The police had been contacted but said they'd need more concrete evidence before they could act. Daniel Morrison's cottage wasn't difficult to find. It was the only property on a narrow lane that wound through the hills outside Grasmere. As we approached, I spotted Mary's beaten-up Corsa parked behind some trees, partially hidden from the road. My heart hammered against my ribs. Patricia gasped and grabbed my arm. The cottage looked idyllic from the outside, stone walls covered in ivy, smoke curling from the chimney, flower boxes under the windows. But something felt wrong. The curtains were all drawn despite it being midday, and there was an eerie stillness about the place. Patricia wanted to march straight to the front door, but I held her back. "We need to be careful," I whispered. "We don't know what state of mind Mary's in, or how this Daniel person is handling her showing up uninvited." We crept closer to the cottage, staying low behind the stone garden wall. That's when we heard shouting from inside, Daniel's voice, raised and angry, though I couldn't make out the words. Then Mary's voice, pleading, desperate. My blood ran cold. Patricia pulled out her phone to call the police, but before she could dial, the front door burst open. Daniel stormed out, a tall man with paint-stained clothes and wild hair, carrying what looked like an overnight bag. He threw it into a dark green Land Rover and drove off at speed, gravel spraying behind him. Mary appeared in the doorway, still in the same clothes she'd worn to work on Friday, looking disheveled and frantic. She called after his retreating car, then collapsed onto the front steps, sobbing. Patricia ran to her daughter, and I reluctantly followed. Mary looked up through her tears and her face crumpled further when she saw me. "You told them where I was," she accused through her sobs. "You've been missing for 3 days, Mary." "Your mom was terrified," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I wasn't missing. I was finally getting my life sorted. Daniel and we had something real, something special. But then his ex-girlfriend showed up yesterday and ruined everything." Mary's eyes had that familiar wild look I'd seen the night everything fell apart at our flat. Patricia helped Mary to her feet. "Sweetheart, you can't just show up at someone's house uninvited, especially after he told you to leave him alone." "But we had a connection," Mary wailed. "All those conversations at work, the way he looked at me when I told him about my past. He understood me. He said my strength inspired his art." I felt sick. Even now, even after everything, Mary was still constructing elaborate fantasies, still believing her own lies. "Mary, he looked at you because he felt sorry for what he thought you'd been through. When he found out you'd made it all up, that connection died. You can't force someone to care about you." Mary's expression shifted then, From desperate sadness to something harder, more calculating. You don't understand what it's like, she said quietly. You've always had everything handed to you. The flat, the money, the easy life. Some of us have to fight for what we want. The casual cruelty of it, the way she twisted my attempts to help her into something selfish, took my breath away. After everything we'd been through, she was still painting herself as the victim. Patricia was crying now too, looking between her daughter and me with such pain in her eyes. Mary, love, you need help. This isn't normal. Following someone to their home, staying there for days. I wasn't following him, Mary snapped. He gave me the address. He said I could come visit sometime. But even as she said it, her eyes darted away. Another lie, automatic as breathing. The drive back was tense and silent. Mary sat in the back seat staring out the window, while Patricia and I exchanged worried glances. I dropped them at Patricia's house and was about to leave when Mary grabbed my arm. I know you hate me, she said quietly. But I'm scared. I don't know who I am without the stories. Without you to take care of me. I don't know how to be just me. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost, but then I remembered all the lies, all the people she'd hurt, all the chaos she'd created. Then figure it out, Mary. But figure it out without dragging other people down with you. As I drove home, my phone kept buzzing with messages from Patricia, keeping me updated. Mary had agreed to see a counselor, but only after Patricia threatened to call the police about the stalking incident. Daniel Morrison had also contacted the police to report what had happened, though he said he wouldn't press charges if Mary stayed away from him and his property. I'm emotionally drained. My therapist was right, Mary's problems aren't mine to solve, and they never were. But knowing that and feeling it are two different things. Part of me still mourns the friendship I thought we had, even though I now realize it was built on quicksand. The flat feels different now. Not empty like it did before, but clean, somehow. Free. I think I really will get that cat. Update 6. I thought I was done with Mary, I really did. After the Lake District incident, I blocked her number, avoided places where I might run into her, and threw myself into therapy and rebuilding my life. I even got the cat, a beautiful tabby I named Sage, who has become my perfect companion. For 2 months, things were peaceful. I was sleeping better, my flat felt like home again, and I was starting to trust my own judgment once more. Then last Thursday happened. I was at the local Tesco doing my weekly shop when I bumped into Tom, one of our old uni friends who'd been at Mary's celebration dinner that night. He looked uncomfortable the moment he saw me, which immediately put me on edge. Hey, he said awkwardly, shifting his weight from foot to foot. How are you holding up? I'm doing well, actually. Much better now that, listen, he interrupted, glancing around nervously. I need to tell you something. About that night at the restaurant, Mary asked me to come early, before everyone else arrived. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Tom ran a hand through his hair. She said she wanted to talk to me about you. Said you'd been acting strange lately, controlling, that she was worried about how you'd react to her success. She asked me to back her up if things got awkward. The shopping basket slipped from my hands, clattering to the floor. Back her up how? She said if you got too intense with your praise or made her uncomfortable, I should step in. Make it look like she was the victim. She even coached me on what to say. Tom's face was flushed with shame. I'm so sorry. I had no idea she was lying about everything else. When I heard what really happened with her work colleagues, I felt sick. I stared at him, pieces clicking into place. So that whole scene at the restaurant was planned. At least partially. She knew exactly what buttons to push to make you look bad in front of everyone. Tom's voice cracked. I've been losing sleep over this. When she started crying and pulling away from you, I was supposed to comfort her and glare at you. Make it look like you'd crossed a line. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Not only had Mary been lying to her colleagues about me for months, but she'd orchestrated that entire humiliating scene. She'd set me up to fail, to look like the villain, in front of all our friends. There's more, Tom continued miserably. She's been telling people you kicked her out because you were jealous of her success. That you couldn't handle her becoming independent. I felt that familiar rage building in my chest, but this time it was cleaner, sharper. I wasn't confused anymore, I was just angry. That evening, I called Claire and told her everything Tom had revealed. She was furious, even more than I was. That manipulative little, Claire caught herself. Right, we're going to fix this. I'm calling everyone who was at that dinner. They need to know the truth. But before Claire could start making calls, my phone rang. It was Patricia, and she sounded frantic. I'm so sorry to bother you again, she began, but Mary's done something terrible. She's claiming she's pregnant. My blood ran cold. Pregnant? She says it's Daniel's baby, that painter from work. She's been texting him nonstop, saying he has to take responsibility, that she's keeping the baby whether he likes it or not. Patricia, she barely knew him. And didn't he tell her to stay away? That's just it, I found pregnancy tests in her room. All negative. Every single one. Patricia's voice broke. She's not pregnant, but she's telling everyone she is. She's even booked a doctor's appointment and asked me to come with her for support. I sank into my sofa, Sage purring on my lap, trying to process this latest manipulation. What do you want me to do? I don't know. I'm at my wit's end. She needs serious help, but she won't listen to me. Daniel's threatened to get a restraining order, and honestly, I don't blame him. After Patricia hung up, I sat in my quiet flat, staring at the wall. Part of me wanted to just ignore this latest drama, to let Mary dig her own grave, but another part of me, the part that had cared about her for 7 years, couldn't let her destroy another person's life. I made a decision that my therapist probably wouldn't approve of. I unblocked Mary's number and sent her a text, "Meet me at Costa on High Street tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone." Her response came back within minutes, "I knew you'd come back. I've missed you so much." The next afternoon, I arrived early and chose a table in the back corner. When Mary walked in, I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight, her hair was lank and unwashed, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She looked genuinely unwell. She slid into the seat across from me, eyes bright with hope. "I knew you'd forgive me eventually. We're best friends, I know about the pregnancy lie, Mary." Her face went white, then red, then white again. "I don't know what you mean. Your mom found the negative tests. Daniel's going to get a restraining order. This has to stop." Mary's composure cracked. "You don't understand. I love him. We could have been happy together if everyone hadn't interfered. Mary, you barely knew him. You lied to him about your past, stalked him to his home, and now you're trying to trap him with a fake pregnancy. That's not love, that's obsession." She started crying then, but there was something performative about it, something calculated. "I just wanted to be loved. Is that so wrong? You had everything, the flat, the money, the easy life. I had to fight for scraps of attention. I gave you everything I had," I said quietly. "My home, my friendship, my trust. And you repaid me by lying about me to anyone who would listen. I never meant for it to go so far." Mary wiped her eyes with a tissue. "It started small, just little stories to make me seem more interesting. But then people cared about me, wanted to protect me. I'd never had that before." For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her again. Almost. "Mary, you need to call Daniel and apologize. Tell him the truth about the pregnancy. And you need to get real help, not just counseling you attend to placate your mom." She looked up at me with those wide eyes that had fooled me for so long. "Will you help me? Will you come back if I do those things?" "No," I said firmly. "We're done, Mary. Forever. I'm only here because I don't want you to destroy someone else the way you tried to destroy me." Her expression shifted then, the mask slipping again. "You're just like everyone else. You never really cared about me." "I cared about you more than anyone else in your life," I replied. "And you threw it away for nothing." I left her sitting there and walked out into the crisp autumn air, feeling oddly lighter. My phone buzzed with a text from her as I reached my car. "You'll regret this. I know things about you that could ruin your life." I screenshot the message and forwarded it to Patricia with the caption, "She's threatening me now." Patricia's response was immediate, "That's it. I'm calling the doctor about getting her sectioned for a psychiatric evaluation." As I drove home to my peaceful flat and my cat, I realized something had shifted inside me. I wasn't afraid of Mary anymore. I wasn't guilty about cutting her out of my life. For the first time in months, I felt completely free. Whatever Mary does next, it's not my problem to solve.